Thank you. Minister, I wish to discuss the purpose for which the Firearms Committee was set up, why it was established, and what were the wide-ranging matters that related to firearms of which you needed advice on. I think it's fair to say it's not long ago since I asked you a series of questions related to the Firearms Expert Committee, which were mainly based on the serious concerns brought to me by members of gun-related organisations. These primarily included firearms holders and those who wish to engage in recreational hunting and shooting pursuits, as well as those who must carry out pest control to protect their livelihood. They're, to put it mildly, very annoyed at the way the whole process has been conducted, and are at a loss to understand what the purpose of the Firearms Expert Committee was. You replied with the following: the purpose of the Firearms Expert Committee was to serve in an advisory capacity to me as Minister, providing guidance on a wide range of matters related to the firearms licensing in the state. This was very disappointing, and it was a very vague response, Minister. Now, I've spoken to many different people involved in the firearms groups. In fact, judging by what I've been told and read so far, I've engaged in far more comprehensive consultation with representative groups than the Firearms Expert Committee did. Last Count Corla, I'm asking the Minister to explain why this committee was established and at what were the wide range of matters related that the Minister needed guidance on. The Firearms Expert Committee was established not to provide expert evidence on the issues, but as a closed shop to ram through changes to suit a narrow minority of people involved. And one of the members of the committee resigned due to the way the committee was concluding its work. And did the department consult with this member as to why he resigned, Minister? Were any issues identified? Was there any expert left on the committee after he resigned? And the other question which is vital to this is, did the department ask appointed committee members to fill out a declaration of interests? And if so, were any conflicts of interest identified? And if members were not asked to fill out a declaration of interest, then the question is, why weren't they? Minister, was one of the independent experts appointed to the committee actually employed by the Department of Justice at a time of their appointment as an independent member of that committee? Concerned constituents have approached me and have identified possible cases where members of the Firearms Expert Committee could gain a personal financial benefit if some of this committee's recommendations in the report were to be implemented. Now, there's clear anger among the gun users about this, because it gives the impression that this whole process is not interested in making changes or improvements for the right reasons. There's also serious anger and concern about the potential for these recommendations to leave genuine gun users with criminal charges for firearms offences for the most minor and trivial of indiscretions. One I shall just outline. If you register a firearm in County Wexford, but if that person gets invited to shoot in Carlow at a legitimately organised event, they now become a criminal in charge of an illegal firearm. Falling foul of these things as our firearms offences, which could stop people getting future licences or even prevent some from being allowed to enter into different countries. It may even work against someone in a child custody case. It could also prevent someone from getting Garda vetting for a job or a voluntary position in a club or organisation. It's very clear that all of this has been done with little regard to the opinions of those who actually use guns. Consultation has been absent, engagement has been absent, and solutions proposed are impractical and non-existent.
Thank you very much, Last Count Corla, and thank you, Deputy, for raising her specific question, which is why the committee was established and what were the wide range of matters related to firearms which the Minister formed committee to advise on. The Firearms Expert Committee was established to serve in an advisory capacity in relation to various firearms matters, and I would like to thank the committee for its work. The FEC was established following a request for expressions of interest from suitably qualified candidates. It was published on the 31st of March 2022. This call was published on the Department of Justice website and shared among stakeholders' organisations. The call for expressions of interest was administered by officials from the Criminal Justice Policy function and the Department of Justice, which also acts as a secretariat to the committee. Appointments to the committee were made entirely in line with the process advised in the published expressions of interest document. The FEC was made up of 5 members, an independent chairperson, a representative of An Garda Síochána, a representative of the Department of Justice, and 2 non-governmental ordinary members having experience in firearms. This structure was chosen to give balanced representation to both governmental and non-governmental stakeholders. In answer to the Deputy's question as to the matters that the committee was asked to examine, the FE's terms of reference remain publicly available on gov.ie, and they are comprehensive and include the following: to carry out an assessment of all types of firearms which are currently licensed in the state to determine their use under the existing licensing system, to make recommendations based on the assessment of which types of firearms should be licensable in the state and for what purposes, to consider whether firearms certificates should be conditioned to specify the locations where the firearms may be used, to consider whether firearms certificates should be conditioned to limit the use of the firearm to the purpose for which the firearm certificate was sought, to consider whether there should be a limit on the number and type of firearms a person may hold. I assume that the Deputy has read the reports of the committee, and she will be aware that they represent a comprehensive examination of the matters set out, and that among the 80 or so recommendations made are various measures to improve the licensing process. The final meeting of the FEC took place on the 3rd of March 2023, and I have received their final reports, which I published on Friday the 31st of March 2023 on gov.ie. In addition to publishing the final reports, I also published the minutes and a summary of each in-person meeting. And for the avoidance of any doubt, let me reiterate that the purpose of the FEC was to serve in an advisory capacity to me as a Minister in respect of its terms of reference, and to make recommendations on a range of firearms matters for subsequent consideration. As I have emphasised, before the FEC was established and throughout this process, any proposed changes to policy or legislation arising from any recommendations by the FEC will be subject to prior and extensive consultation with firearms stakeholders. To that end, an online consultation platform was developed, and on the 3rd of May 2023, I launched the FEC consultation online on gov.ie, which concluded on the 2nd of June 2023. In addition to this, I have also sought written submissions on the recommendations of the FEC from a range of stakeholders' organisations, including the Firearms User Representative Group, the IFA, and the NRGC and others, and there was no restriction put on those submissions. Now that the wider public consultation has concluded, and having received their written submissions, I intend to meet with such groups with meeting schedules later this week. I'm meeting FIRG tomorrow and the IFA, and I'm looking forward to having further engagements with other stakeholders as well. Thank you. Let's go, Curla.
I'm sorry, Minister, you failed to address any of the questions contained within, and I think the reality is that you well know that the only person who could have been regarded as an expert resigned from that committee with a damning statement that he thought the committee was a farce. Now, I don't know how you, in an advisory capacity, can then use reports from the only expert contained on that committee telling you that what was going on was a farce. And I think you know perfectly well, I don't need to outline the anger that the gun clubs around the country, not just in County Wexford, feel about this process. 80 recommendations. Of course I've read the report, so have they. This is a cart before the horse performance. It would have been well served had you gone back to the model that brought in the 2009 legislation, which is exactly what the stakeholders believe was a successful model. And I'm encouraging you now, on their behalf, that rather than doing it the other way around and putting the cart before the horse, that you would engage, discard the reports that are held in esteem by no one, least of all the experts that you say compiled them, when clearly the only expert resigned from the committee and gave it a damning report. So I think, Minister, to save everybody's face in this regard, that you start again. You go back to the stakeholder involvement that was put together for the 2009 legislation that was compiled. And the model wasn't broken, so I'm not sure why you sought to fix it. But I think there was a consultative panel, and it was from 2004. And that was a successful model of which everybody agreed with. So if it wasn't broken, I'm not sure why you tried to fix it, but it certainly hasn't worked. And all it has caused is consternation. There are huge concerns about many of the gun clubs and their members and different sporting events that will make them criminals if any of these reports, any of the recommendations are in effect brought in.
Thank you, Last Ceann Comhairle. It was.
Thank you.
Well, in fairness, I answered the question you actually put down for the floor here this morning, Deputy. It was unfortunate one of the members of the committee resigned or withdrew their support, but they did so after the committee concluded all of its meetings and actually has submitted its report, which was, in fairness, quite late in the day. In relation to this process, all this was an advisory group making recommendations, many of which say, for example, to consider or to look at. That's all it is. These are not laws, and I think a lot of the fear that has been generated among the gun ownership community has because a lot of what is being done here, which is simply at a very early stage of, as I say, an advisory committee, now starting to have extensive consultations. That's all. So when I read, for example, that new government laws, or I hear words like people being criminalised, as if there was laws about to be suddenly enacted. We are at a very, very early stage in a very, very long process whereby all of the gun communities will be considered and consulted before anything is brought in. So there's no new laws about to happen here. There's nobody about to make a criminal. If you let me answer, please. There's no point in trying to shout me down. Let me answer. Nobody's about to make criminals. You know, even you read you read misinformation, like in my own local paper, where somebody had said that organisations were going to be charged €1,000 a year. You know, a figure plucked out of someone's backside.
That wasn't my statement.
No, but it was in. No, I'm giving examples of the kind of misrepresentations that are being put out there that are creating unnecessary fear among the gun community. And I can assure you, extensive consultations. But have no mistake either, you know, we do have to always keep things like firearms under review. That is important as well, so it is, Deputy.
We're over time now, Minister Carvalho.